What to do if you encounter a bear? Why some survive and others don't. Part 1. A bear does not attack immediately. Most people believe that an encounter with a bear is a single moment, a flash, a charge, impact, death, or a miracle. But in reality, everything begins long before a human even realizes they are no longer alone. A bear almost always knows about a human first. It hears footsteps. It catches scent particles carried by the wind. It notices movement where the forest usually flows differently. To a bear, a human is not automatically prey and not automatically an enemy. It is an unknown object, potentially dangerous, potentially meaningless. And it is this uncertainty that decides everything. A person walks through the forest assuming danger is rare, talking to themselves, filming, thinking about anything except what surrounds them. They believe that if a wild animal appears, there will be warning signs, cracking branches, growling, a clear signal. But the forest does not work that way. A bear is not required to warn. It is not obligated to reveal itself. It can move parallel to a person, tens of meters away, unseen. And most of the time, that is exactly what it does. It observes. This is where the first rule of survival is born, even though the person does not know it yet. You are alive, because the bear has not decided what you are. The moment of visual contact is not an attack. It is an evaluation. When a person finally sees the bear, the reaction is almost universal. The body freezes. Thoughts collapse. Breathing becomes shallow and irregular. The brain searches for a pattern, but there is none. This is not a dog, not a movie, not a zoo. This is raw mass, muscle, claws, and power that exists outside human logic. And this is where the difference between survival and death begins. Not because someone is stronger, not because someone is braver, but because reaction happens before conscious thought. People who survive almost always stop first. Their bodies do not immediately turn and run. They do not scream. They do not flail. There is a brief suspension, a moment where panic does not yet take control. This is rarely a conscious choice. It is simply the absence of chaos in the first seconds. Those who die often make their fatal decision before the bear moves at all. They run. Running is one of the oldest survival instincts humanity has. It saved lives for hundreds of thousands of years. But it does not save you from a bear. A bear does not perceive a running human as escaping. It perceives movement as a trigger, a signal that activates pursuit. Even if the bear had no intention of attacking, running can instantly change that calculation. The bear will catch you, not because it wants to, but because it can. This is where myths collapse. Bears are faster than humans, significantly faster. Over short distances, over rough terrain, uphill, downhill, even when it looks like there might be a chance. And the most dangerous truth is this: a bear's body is designed for explosive power. A human body is not. You will not outrun it, and you will not outlast it. There are stories of people who ran and survived. Those stories create the illusion that running sometimes works. But those cases are exceptions built on luck, terrain, distraction, or the bear losing interest for reasons unrelated to the person's actions. Statistics are unforgiving. The human who stays, who does not break visual logic, who does not transform into a fleeing object, creates space for the bear to keep evaluating, because the bear is still deciding. And in that moment, something subtle and critical unfolds: the exchange of signals. A bear does not understand words. It understands posture, size, direction, eye focus, breathing rhythm, confidence expressed through stillness, fear expressed through behavior. A human who screams hysterically, waves arms wildly, or behaves erratically often believes they are scaring the animal. But a bear does not experience fear the way a human does. It either perceives a threat or chaos, and both can be dangerous. Survivors are often those who do not collapse the structure of the encounter. Those who remain human, rather than becoming prey, behavior. But this is only the beginning, because everything that follows depends on the type of bear, its motivation, its state of mind, and the mistakes made long before the encounter ever happened. Most fatal bear attacks are decided hours before the human ever sees the animal. Most people who survive a bear encounter believe it happened because of what they did in that moment. They stood still. They spoke calmly. They didn't run. They raised their arms. They backed away slowly. And while these details matter, they are rarely the true reason someone lived. The real reason is almost always something that happened earlier, long before the bear was visible, long before the human felt fear, long before the forest felt hostile. A bear attack is rarely spontaneous. It is usually the final point of a chain of events that began quietly, invisibly, and without intention. Bears do not patrol the forest looking for humans. They do not hunt people as a species, but they are highly intelligent, highly sensitive animals whose survival depends on reading their environment accurately. And when that reading is disrupted, the outcome can become lethal. There are two fundamentally different reasons a bear attacks. One is fear, the other is intent. And confusing the two is one of the most common fatal mistakes. A defensive attack happens when a bear believes it, or something it values, is in immediate danger. This includes cubs, food sources, territory, or simply its own personal space. In these situations, the bear is not trying to kill. It is trying to remove a threat. The attack is fast, explosive, and often ends abruptly once the bear believes the danger is gone. A predatory attack is something else, entirely. In this case, the bear is not reacting, it is choosing. This distinction matters more than anything else. A defensive bear often gives signals. Heavy breathing, jaw popping, bluff charges, ground slaps. These behaviors are not signs of mercy. They are signs of internal conflict. The bear is saying, "Leave now before I decide differently." A predatory bear does not negotiate. It approaches quietly. It observes. It follows. Sometimes for minutes, sometimes for hours. The human often never realizes they are being evaluated as a potential food source. There is no warning, no bluff, no display. When the attack comes, it is direct and relentless. And this is where many survival myths collapse. People are taught to make noise in the forest, to announce their presence, to avoid surprising animals. This advice is generally sound, but incomplete. Because noise does not just warn animals, it also informs them. A bear that hears consistent human noise from a distance can track it, evaluate it, decide whether to avoid it, tolerate it, or approach it. A quiet human may surprise a bear at close range, triggering a defensive reaction. A loud human may attract the attention of a bear that otherwise would never have noticed them. Neither is inherently safe. Neither is inherently dangerous. What matters is context, and humans are notoriously bad at understanding it. Most people assume danger begins when they see the bear. In reality, danger often begins when they choose a trail, a time of day, or a behavior pattern that overlaps with a bear's natural routine. Early morning and late evening are feeding hours. Dense vegetation limits visibility. Wind direction carries scent unpredictably. A human walking downwind may unknowingly broadcast their presence for hundreds of meters. A human walking upwind may walk directly into a bear's personal space without warning. Food is another silent factor. People underestimate how sensitive bears are to smell. Food residue on clothes, crumbs in backpacks, energy bars wrapped hours ago, even toothpaste. To a bear, these are not human artifacts. They are signals, not of danger, of opportunity. Many predatory encounters begin not with sight, but with scent. The bear does not rush. It does not charge immediately. It follows, observes how the human moves, how aware they are, how quickly they react to changes in the environment. The bear is not curious in a human way. It is assessing cost versus reward. This is why some attacks seem to come out of nowhere. The human was already being followed. The moment of realization, the first sighting, feels sudden and shocking. But for the bear, the situation has been unfolding calmly. This difference in perception is critical. Humans experience the encounter as chaos. Bears experience it as process. And when the human reacts with panic, the bear receives information. Sudden movement, erratic behavior, loss of structure. These signals can push a situation from neutral into dangerous. Another misunderstood factor is eye contact. Humans are taught that eye contact shows confidence. In human interactions, it does. In the animal world, sustained eye contact is often a challenge. A bear may interpret it as aggression, or it may interpret avoidance as weakness. There is no universal rule, only interpretation, based on posture, distance, and movement. This uncertainty is what makes bear encounters so dangerous. There is no single correct response. There is only an appropriate response to a specific situation. And humans are rarely trained to recognize which situation they are in. This is why experience matters more than instructions. Experienced outdoorsmen often survive, not because they know what to do, but because they recognize what is happening faster. They notice the silence, the shift in bird behavior, the smell, the subtle feeling of being watched. Their bodies react before panic takes over. Inexperienced people often miss these signs. They walk deeper, they linger, they stop in places that feel safe but are actually transitional zones for wildlife. They sit down, they rest, they eat, and the bear watches. By the time the human becomes aware, the bear has already formed an opinion. This is why survival often looks like luck from the outside, but it isn't. It is the result of dozens of small, invisible factors aligning in a way that leaves room for de-escalation. In the next part, everything becomes more intense, because not all bears behave the same. And the moment of physical contact, when it happens, is where misunderstanding becomes fatal. Part 3. When the bear moves, and time breaks apart. The moment a bear decides to move, time stops behaving normally. People who survive often describe it the same way. The world narrows. Sound distorts. Distance loses meaning. What felt like 50 meters becomes nothing. What seemed far suddenly fills the entire space of existence. A charging bear is not a sprint. It is an explosion. The ground does not tremble first. There is no cinematic warning. The bear simply isn't there. And then it is. Muscle, mass, speed compressed into a single direction. And the human body reacts before the mind has time to form a thought. This is where many people misunderstand what a charge actually is. Not every charge is meant to kill. A defensive charge is often a test. A sudden, overwhelming demonstration of power meant to force a retreat. The bear may stop short, veer away, slam the ground, bite, and release. It is not mercy. It is calculation. The bear wants the threat gone, not necessarily destroyed. But to the human, it feels identical to death arriving. Heart rate spikes so fast it disrupts coordination. Vision tunnels. Hands lose fine motor control. Breathing becomes shallow, erratic. The body prepares either to fight or flee. Two responses that are both nearly useless against an animal of this scale. This is where one of the most dangerous myths comes into play. People believe that playing dead is a technique. It is not. It is a last outcome of a specific situation, with a specific type of bear, under specific conditions. And when misunderstood, it kills. When a defensive bear makes contact, the human body often collapses not by choice, but by impact. Bones break, lungs lose air, consciousness flickers. If the bear's motivation is purely defensive, it may disengage once the human stops behaving like a threat. This is why some people survive by remaining motionless afterward. Not because they made a clever decision, but because their bodies cease to signal danger. However, when the attack is predatory, stillness becomes fatal. A predatory bear does not test. It commits. In these cases, there is no bluff, no stop short, no warning bite. The bear aims for control, for the head, for the spine, for disabling damage. Movement does not trigger it. Presence does. The human is no longer a threat to remove, but an object to neutralize. This is why survivors of predatory attacks describe something different. They describe persistence. The bear does not leave. It does not disengage. It returns. And this is where species matters. Black bears, despite their name, are often the most dangerous in predatory scenarios. They are more likely to view humans as potential food. Their attacks tend to be quieter, more deliberate, less explosive, more sustained. Brown bears, including grizzlies, are more likely to attack defensively. Their violence is overwhelming, but often brief. Once the perceived threat ends, so does the attack. Polar bears exist outside this pattern entirely. To them, humans are prey by default. There is no ambiguity, no bluff, no evaluation. Survival in those encounters is almost entirely dependent on external factors, not human behavior. But the human body does not know which bear it is facing. Fear collapses nuance. People freeze when they should resist. People resist when they should conserve energy. People scream when silence would have changed nothing, and silence when sound might have mattered earlier. And yet, despite all this, people survive. They survive because survival at this stage is no longer about control. It is about damage limitation. Protecting the neck. Keeping the airway clear. Avoiding fatal bleeding. Staying conscious long enough for the bear to lose interest or be interrupted by environment. Many survivors never realize how close they were to death until much later. Memory fractures under trauma. Details vanish. The brain edits reality to protect itself. But one truth remains consistent across almost every account. The people who lived were not the ones who tried to win. They were the ones whose actions, intentional or not, aligned with what the bear needed the situation to become in order to disengage. And this brings us to the most uncomfortable reality. There is no heroism in surviving a bear attack. There is no victory. There is only alignment between biology, behavior, timing, and chance. In the next part, the story shifts again. Because survival does not end when the bear leaves. It ends when the human body either stabilizes or fails. Part 4. After the bear leaves. When survival is still not guaranteed. The most dangerous moment of a bear encounter often comes after the bear is gone. When the forest falls silent again, when the crushing weight lifts, when the human realizes they are still alive. This is where many people make their final mistake. Adrenaline is a powerful liar. During the attack, the body floods itself with chemicals designed for one purpose: to keep you moving long enough to escape immediate death. Pain is muted. Injuries feel distant, unreal. Muscles respond even when they are damaged. The mind narrows its focus to survival alone. When the bear leaves, that chemical shield begins to collapse. Blood loss that felt like nothing suddenly becomes weakness. Shaking begins, not from cold, but from shock. Vision blurs at the edges. Sounds feel distant, hollow, as if the world has moved a step away from you. Many survivors describe a false sense of victory at this stage: relief, gratitude, the belief that the worst is over. It often isn't. Internal injuries do not announce themselves loudly. A crushed rib can puncture a lung slowly. Blunt force trauma can cause internal bleeding that remains invisible for hours. Bite wounds introduce bacteria deep into muscle tissue, where infection can spread rapidly. The human body is incredibly resilient and terrifyingly fragile. People who die after bear attacks often do so not because the damage was immediately fatal, but because they underestimated it. They stood up too quickly. They began walking without stabilizing themselves. They ignored the warning signs of shock because they wanted the encounter to be over. Shock does not feel like panic. It feels like calm. A strange, floating calm where thoughts feel slow and heavy, where the body feels distant, where decisions feel unimportant. This is the body shutting down non-essential systems. Blood is redirected. Consciousness is preserved only as long as it is useful. People in shock often say they feel fine. They are not. This is why experienced rescue workers fear the quiet survivors more than the screaming ones. A person who is screaming is conscious of pain. A person who is calm, detached, and oddly peaceful may be hours away from collapse. The forest, meanwhile, has not changed. The terrain is the same. The distance to safety is the same. The temperature is the same. But the human is no longer the same organism who walked into it. Movement becomes a calculation. Every step costs energy. Every breath hurts. Balance is uncertain. Blood loss makes thinking unreliable. And yet the instinct to move is overwhelming. Staying still feels like surrender. Walking feels like control. Many people die because they try to walk out when they should have stopped. The body needs time to stabilize, to clot, to regulate breathing, to reduce swelling, but the mind fears immobility. In the wild, stillness feels like death approaching. This internal conflict destroys people. Some survivors sit down for just a minute and never stand up again. Hypothermia sets in even in mild temperatures when the body is injured. Sweat cools the skin. Blood loss reduces heat production. Muscles stop generating warmth. The forest becomes cold faster than expected. Those who survive long enough to reach help often do so slowly, painfully, in fragments. They stop often. They sit. They lie down. They crawl. They use trees for support. They mark their path not consciously, but through blood and broken vegetation. And even then, survival is not guaranteed. Rescue is not immediate. Signals are missed. GPS fails. Phones die. Trails disappear. People are found hours or days later, sometimes within walking distance of safety. And sometimes they are found too late. In the aftermath, survivors rarely talk about bravery. They talk about disbelief. The realization that death did not arrive when it should have, that something larger, stronger, and perfectly capable of killing them chose, for reasons they will never fully understand, to stop. This understanding stays with them, long after the wounds heal, long after the scars fade, long after the forest returns to silence. In the next part, we step back and look at the larger pattern. Why certain people are more likely to survive bear encounters across decades of data and experience, not because of heroics, but because of behavior long before the moment of danger. Part 5. Experience versus strength. Why the forest decides who lives. Survival in a bear encounter is rarely about raw strength. It is rarely about courage. Almost never about heroic instincts. The forest does not respond to bravado. It responds to pattern recognition, subtlety, and learned behavior. Experienced outdoorsmen survive not because they are faster or tougher. They survive because they recognize the environment before it recognizes them. They notice small deviations in the wind, in the sound of leaves, in the absence of birdsong. Their brains unconsciously track signals that most people never even see. This awareness begins long before the bear appears. Hours, even days of training and habitual attentiveness accumulate into micro-decisions that can save a life. Which path to take, where to stop, when to rest, even how to carry food. Novices, by contrast, move like a storm. Erratic, noisy, impatient. Their minds are busy thinking about something else. Pictures, videos, the next turn. They leave traces the bear can read. A sudden step on brittle branches, the scent of sweat, the uncalculated pause in a clearing. The forest, in its subtle way, observes. It teaches the human about danger, if the human is perceptive, enough to learn. And yet, experience alone is not a guarantee. Overconfidence is a silent killer. The person who believes they know the rules too well may ignore signs, assume safety, or take unnecessary risks. A confident hiker may underestimate wind direction, misjudge bear behavior, or fail to notice the early warning of movement among trees. Confidence can lure a human into the very moment where panic will arrive too late. Fear, on the other hand, is a nuanced ally. A carefully measured fear heightens awareness. It focuses attention on detail. It sharpens instincts. But uncontrolled fear triggers chaos, the urge to flee, the flailing arms, the breakdown of body control. Most people mistake panic for action. But panic is a betrayal of the only tools that work in nature: observation, restraint, and timing. Every bear encounter can be seen as a test, not of brute force, but of patience and perception. Nature does not issue warnings. It provides information in whispers: a snapped twig, a scent in the air, a shadow moving against the trees. Those who listen and interpret survive. Those who ignore, doubt, or act impulsively do not. And then there is luck. No matter how experienced, no matter how cautious, the forest is an ecosystem beyond human control. A bear might be hungry, distracted, or simply curious. Wind may carry scent one way instead of another. Another animal may alter the situation unpredictably. Even the most seasoned survivalists can encounter the unpredictable, but survival patterns emerge across decades of observation. The survivors are usually those who move with a calm rhythm that does not provoke reflexive aggression, recognize the importance of leaving the bear an escape path, maintain situational awareness without succumbing to adrenaline, understand timing, when to remain still, when to back away, when to act, avoid presenting themselves as prey through erratic movement or panic signals. Experience in this sense is not knowledge. It is patterned reaction, deeply embedded in muscle memory, honed by repeated attention to subtle environmental cues. Strength can carry you a few steps. Courage can drive you a few choices. But awareness is what allows you to navigate a life-or-death puzzle whose rules change in real time. And while the forest is unforgiving, it is not vengeful. It responds predictably to behavior. A calm human who moves correctly, respects distance, and reads the subtle signs often survives. A hasty human who panics or misinterprets cues often dies. The difference is sometimes milliseconds, sometimes centimeters. The forest does not care about intentions, morality, or heroics. It only cares about behavior. And in the case of a bear encounter, behavior decides everything. In the next part, we will explore the final phase of survival, the moment after the bear disengages, the slow and agonizing fight against injury, exposure, and shock, and the psychological toll of having stared death in the face when the encounter is over, but survival is still far from guaranteed. Part 6. After the attack, when survival still hangs by a thread. The bear has left. Its heavy steps fade into the forest, leaving silence and an almost tangible emptiness. The human is alive. Heart pounding, muscles trembling, body scarred and bleeding. Relief washes over, but it is a dangerous illusion. Adrenaline is fading, and with it, the body begins to betray its own survival. Pain returns like a tidal wave. Injuries that felt minor during the encounter become acute. Every step sends shock waves of agony through bruised ribs, torn muscles, and punctured skin. Shock creeps in quietly. It is invisible to the untrained eye but undeniable to the body. Blood pressure drops. Breathing becomes shallow, yet rapid. Limbs feel heavy. Vision narrows. The mind feels detached, as if watching itself from a distance. This detachment can feel like calm, but it is a lie. It is the body conserving life by shutting down what it perceives as non-essential functions. Internal injuries, the ones the human cannot see, are often the deadliest. A rib broken inward can puncture a lung. Blunt trauma can create slow internal bleeding. Bite wounds carry infection deep into tissue. Even minor wounds can turn lethal when combined with blood loss, shock, and exposure. The forest, indifferent, waits. It offers no help, no warmth, no safety. Every movement now costs energy that the human cannot spare. Every breath feels labored. Hypothermia can set in even in moderate temperatures, especially when combined with blood loss and wet clothing. Many survivors recount walking a mile or two after the bear left, only to collapse a few hundred meters from safety. The body refuses to comply. Pain overtakes thought. Coordination falters. The human becomes acutely aware that survival is not guaranteed just because the immediate threat is gone. Psychology is as lethal as physiology. The mind struggles to process the encounter. Relief can turn into disbelief. Panic can return unpredictably, triggered by a sound, a shadow, or a memory of what just occurred. Even when rationally aware of a path to safety, fear can slow motion, disrupt decision-making, and amplify exhaustion. Survival in this phase depends on patience, self-control, and knowledge. The human must manage pain, conserve energy, and maintain consciousness long enough to reach help or a safe location. Every misstep is magnified. Falling once can lead to more bleeding, further exposure, or loss of orientation. And yet, the human is compelled to move. Immobility feels like surrender, like giving the forest and the bear the victory. Walking feels like life, even when the body rebels. This internal conflict is merciless. Many who die in this phase are victims not of the bear's claws, but of their own physiology and misjudged urgency. Those who survive often do so because of micro-decisions repeated dozens of times. Choosing the path, with cover, resting when necessary, improvising a bandage, staying aware of wind and terrain, controlling breathing. Survival becomes a sequence of deliberate, often subconscious decisions made in extreme pain and fear. Even after reaching safety, the body and mind are far from whole. Recovery is slow, and trauma lingers. The forest does not forget. Memory reconstructs the attack in fragments, sometimes exaggerating, sometimes omitting. The survivor carries both scars and stories, a testament to the narrow line that once separated life from death. This phase, hours after the bear left, often determines the final outcome. Many fatalities occur, not at the moment of attack, but during the agonizing hours that follow, a stark reminder that survival is a process, not a single act. In the next part, we will examine real case studies, contrasting those who survived versus those who did not, to reveal patterns in behavior, decisions, and luck that truly decide who lives when humans meet the apex of wilderness danger. Part 7. Case Studies. How some lived and others did not. Every bear encounter tells a story, and in the patterns of these stories, survival reveals itself. Across decades, across forests, across countless incidents, certain truths emerge, truths invisible in textbooks, yet brutally clear in reality. Consider the case of a hiker in Alaska. He was experienced, calm, and equipped. While crossing a dense spruce forest, he spotted a grizzly mother with cubs. Instead of panicking, he froze. His body instinctively minimized movement. He spoke softly, maintaining a low, steady tone. He backed away slowly, giving the bear an escape path. The bear charged once, slammed the ground, then veered off. He survived. Why? Because his behavior aligned perfectly with the bear's need to feel unthreatened while maintaining space for its cubs. Timing, calmness, and patience saved him. Contrast this with a group of tourists in Yellowstone. They were inexperienced, excited, and noisy. When a black bear appeared near a trail, they screamed, waved cameras, and ran. The bear followed, attacked one of them, inflicting severe injuries. They survived only through rapid intervention from park rangers. The mistake was clear. Panic, erratic movement, and misunderstanding the animal's behavior turned an evaluative situation into a fatal one. Patterns appear consistently across hundreds of incidents. Survival is rarely about tools, weapons, or brute strength. It is about behavioral alignment with the animal's perception. Humans who survive almost always maintain calm under adrenaline surge, give the bear space, avoid triggering predatory instincts, read environmental and animal cues, and make micro-decisions based on observation rather than impulse. Fatalities, by contrast, almost always result from panic and uncontrolled movement, misjudgment of distance or terrain, running when the bear was defensive, provoking predatory curiosity through erratic behavior, and ignoring early warning signs from the forest itself. Sounds, wind, and animal behavior. Consider another case, a hiker in the Rockies. He survived a brown bear attack by remaining still after a sudden defensive charge. He played dead only because his body instinctively collapsed under impact. Minutes later, the bear sniffed, circled, and left. Survival depended on subconscious reactions more than conscious decision-making. Those who died in similar circumstances often attempted to struggle, scream, or flee, triggering additional aggression. Experience amplifies the ability to read these signals. Veterans of wilderness expeditions describe a sixth sense, an awareness of subtle changes in the forest. A bird suddenly silent, a distant branch snapping, a scent in the wind. These small cues create the buffer that allows a human to avoid surprise encounters, or to react correctly if discovered. Yet experience alone is not enough. Overconfidence is deadly. Those who assume their knowledge guarantees safety are often the ones making misjudgments. Standing too close, misreading bear behavior, or underestimating the animal's capabilities. The forest has no memory. It treats each encounter independently. The bear does not care about experience, only about behavior and signals. Even minor mistakes, like turning the back abruptly or making direct eye contact, can escalate a situation. The difference between life and death often occurs in milliseconds. Observations show that survivors rarely outthink the bear. they respond appropriately to its behavior. Panic or indecision almost always leads to injury or death. Across these cases, a striking pattern emerges. Survival is less about human intention and more about alignment between the human's actions and the bear's perception. Nature enforces its rules. Humans who survive do so because their movements, stillness, or voice unconsciously match the bear's needs in that moment. Those who die break the invisible contract, even unknowingly. The forest itself plays a silent role. Those who survive tend to have chosen trails, times of day, and areas that reduce risk, avoiding dense cub habitats, understanding wind direction, and moving in ways that do not surprise a bear. Inexperience and ignorance of these subtle environmental factors dramatically increase the chance of a fatal encounter. In the next part, we will explore psychological aftermath. How survivors process trauma, the mental patterns that develop after facing life or death encounters, and why understanding fear and instinct is crucial to returning safely to civilization. Part 8. The psychology of survival. Fear, trauma, and the mind. After surviving a bear encounter does not end when the animal leaves. In many ways, the forest continues inside the mind long after it has physically departed. The psychological aftermath is as dangerous as the claws and teeth that drove the encounter in the first place. Immediately after surviving, the mind is flooded with a cocktail of chemicals. Adrenaline still coursing, cortisol spiking, endorphins masking pain. The survivor feels both shockingly alive and strangely unreal. Every sound in the forest is amplified. The rustle of leaves, a bird call, the distant snap of a branch. Each noise triggers a flicker of panic, a flash of memory replaying the attack, milliseconds before the mind can reason. Some survivors experience hypervigilance. Their senses are heightened. Eyes dart constantly, scanning for movement, ears strain for the faintest crack. The forest that was once a backdrop for hiking becomes a theater of potential death. This heightened alertness can save lives, allowing the survivor to navigate back to safety, but it is exhausting and unsustainable for hours or days. Other survivors experience numbness. The brain, overwhelmed by trauma, suppresses emotion as a protective mechanism. Pain is muted. Decisions feel delayed. The survivor may walk for hours without fully registering injuries or danger. While this can sometimes prevent panic, it also increases the risk of mistakes. Misjudging distance, ignoring blood loss, or failing to notice obstacles. Fear in this context becomes a tool, or a trap. Properly calibrated fear keeps a person alert and cautious, guiding micro-decisions during evacuation. Mismanaged fear leads to paralysis or impulsive movement, magnifying the likelihood of further injury. Many near-fatal post-encounter incidents involve survivors misreading their own fear, believing they are safe when the body is silently collapsing under shock, exhaustion, or injury. Memory is unreliable. The mind fragments experiences into discrete flashes: the snap of a branch, the sudden view of a massive paw, the searing pain of a bite. Survivors often reconstruct the event incorrectly, filling in blanks, amplifying or diminishing threats. Yet these reconstructions can shape future survival. Understanding what truly happened versus what was imagined becomes a subtle, ongoing challenge, one that can determine responses in future wilderness scenarios. Psychologists studying survival note a pattern. Those who integrate their fear and trauma into conscious awareness rather than suppress it tend to recover and learn faster. They reflect on what worked, what signals they missed, and how their reactions affected outcomes. Those who avoid processing trauma may develop delayed reactions. Panic in the presence of benign wildlife, sleeplessness, and heightened anxiety that undermines confidence in future decisions. The interplay of body and mind continues to dictate survival, even as physical escape progresses. Hypothermia, blood loss, and injuries interact with cognitive function. Decision-making falters. Judgment weakens. Panic can resurface hours after the attack, triggered by minor stimuli, sometimes miles from the original encounter. Experience again proves decisive. Survivors with prior wilderness training, who understand how to pace themselves, monitor physiological warning signs, and use mental focus techniques, are more likely to reach help. They manage fear actively, controlling breathing, scanning deliberately, and breaking the overwhelming experience into manageable tasks. In contrast, Inexperienced survivors may misinterpret the forest as hostile or random, ignoring the cues they had previously missed. They may become lost, take unnecessary risks, or overexert themselves trying to escape perceived threats. The encounter, though over, continues to influence decisions and behaviors, often lethally. Ultimately, survival is not just a physical process. It is a psychological and physiological negotiation with the forest, the bear, and one's own mind. The human who survives is one who navigates both the external threat and the internal chaos, a balancing act between fear, reason, and instinct. In the next part, we will explore how preparation and habit shape survival, the invisible practices that dramatically increase the chances of surviving bear encounters, and why small, often overlooked behaviors before even entering the forest can decide life or death. Part 9. Preparation and Habits, the Unseen Factors in Survival. Survival begins long before a bear appears. The forest does not distinguish between the aware and the unaware until a human steps into its realm, yet the outcomes are often predetermined by subtle choices made hours, even days, beforehand. Experienced hikers, rangers, and wilderness veterans understand this instinctively. They know that survival is less about weapons, bells, or bear spray alone, and more about a sequence of carefully ingrained habits. Routes chosen, times of travel, noise management, scent control, observation skills, and constant awareness. These habits, almost invisible in daily life, become decisive under extreme pressure. Consider the choice of trail. A seemingly minor decision, selecting a path along a ridge versus a dense thicket, changes visibility and reaction time dramatically. Open ridges allow a human to see the forest ahead, but expose them to sight from a distance. Dense thickets conceal, but provide hiding only if the human moves carefully and quietly. Each choice alters the bear's perception of the human, whether as threat, curiosity, or prey. Time of day is equally critical. Bears are crepuscular in many regions, active at dawn and dusk. Entering the forest at these times without understanding animal behavior is an invitation to surprise encounters. Season, food availability, and territorial patterns all combine to dictate the likelihood of crossing paths. Prepared humans adjust their schedule, often unknowingly, reducing risk before it even exists. Noise management is another invisible skill. Humans produce a symphony of unintended signals, footsteps, equipment rattling, talking, even breath carried by wind. The experienced hiker controls these signals, consciously or subconsciously, creating a rhythm that does not trigger defensive or predatory instincts in wildlife. The novice, unaware, broadcasts location indiscriminately, inadvertently inviting attention. Scent control, too, is decisive. Bears possess a sense of smell thousands of times more acute than humans. A single misplaced food wrapper, a drop of sweat, or even toothpaste residue can attract a bear. Survivors often follow habits without realizing their impact. Storing food in bear-proof containers, washing hands and utensils thoroughly, changing clothes after cooking, and minimizing odor trails. These small habits dramatically reduce predatory encounters. Observation skills create a second line of defense. Experienced humans subconsciously scan for signs of bear presence. Tracks, scat, disturbed vegetation, scratch marks, broken branches. They notice the subtle absence of bird calls or the unusual quiet among squirrels, indicators that a large animal is nearby. These micro-signals allow preemptive decisions, changing route, slowing pace, or preparing for an encounter before the bear appears. Even posture and behavior while walking matter. A calm, deliberate gait, consistent scanning, and minimal abrupt movements reduce the chance of being perceived as erratic or threatening. Survivors often move without thinking about these actions, but their bodies are conditioned through repetition. The novice, unaware, may flail, stumble, or rush, triggering the bear's instinctual responses. Preparation extends beyond the immediate environment. Mental rehearsal, awareness of escape routes, and even understanding the species of bear and regional behavior patterns influence the outcomes. The human who knows how brown bears respond differently from black bears, or who understands that maternal grizzlies with cubs are more defensive, is already advantaged, often without conscious recognition of this fact. Finally, the integration of small habits into subconscious reflexes creates resilience. The forest does not reward knowledge that is abstract or theoretical. It rewards behavior executed under stress. The human who has practiced calm, observation, and movement repeatedly can survive because, when adrenaline surges and panic threatens, the correct responses are already encoded in muscle memory. Survivors often reflect on their habits only after the encounter. They realize that countless small, invisible decisions, which path, how they stepped, what time they moved, how they managed noise and scent, combined to prevent the bear from perceiving them as prey. The forest, indifferent yet precise, responded to these patterns with opportunity for survival. In the next part, we will explore the final lessons from bear encounters. How the combination of environment, animal behavior, human physiology, psychology, and preparation converge, and what the ultimate takeaways are for anyone who dares enter the forest. Part 10. The Ultimate. Lessons. How survival emerges from chaos. Survival is not a single act. It is not a hero's moment or a miraculous escape. Survival is a sequence of interactions, a negotiation between human and forest, predator and prey, body and mind. Every moment matters, from the hours before entering the forest to the final steps toward safety after the bear has gone. The forest does not reward intention. It does not care for bravery or panic. It responds to behavior, subtle and precise, executed at the right moment. A human who aligns their movement, posture, and awareness with the signals the bear interprets as non-threatening can survive encounters that would kill others. Those who break this invisible alignment are at extreme risk. The encounter with a bear tests humans in multiple dimensions simultaneously: physiology, psychology, preparation, and habit. Adrenaline and shock can save a life in seconds, but also betray it in hours. Fear can sharpen senses or paralyze action. Small, habitual practices, scent control, noise management, environmental awareness, quietly tip the balance between life and death. Physical condition matters, but it is never sufficient. Speed cannot outrun a bear. Strength cannot overpower one. Tools can assist, but only if wielded appropriately and timely. The body must survive impact, bite, and blunt trauma, then continue moving despite injuries, managing blood loss, shock, and hypothermia. This is the crucible of survival. Endurance in its most extreme form. The mind is the battlefield where survival is truly decided. Panic kills faster than claws. Rationality and trained instinct can preserve life even under extreme pain and exhaustion. Those who survive learn to observe, respond, and conserve energy. They control fear, even subconsciously, aligning reaction with circumstance rather than emotion. Preparation magnifies the likelihood of survival exponentially. Knowledge of animal behavior, forest patterns, terrain, and environmental cues provides a mental map that allows micro-decisions to accumulate into advantage. Experience embeds these patterns into subconscious behavior, making correct reactions automatic under stress. Habit and foresight can prevent encounters entirely, or ensure that, when they occur, the human body and mind respond appropriately. Yet chance remains. No plan is perfect. The forest and its creatures are not predictable in every moment. Even the most experienced, calm, and prepared human may encounter a bear at the wrong time, in the wrong conditions. Luck, environmental factors, and the animal's motivation combine with human behavior to determine outcomes. Survival, ultimately, is a product of pattern, preparation, and fortune converging. History and case studies reveal a final truth. Those who survive are rarely the strongest, bravest, or most armed. They are the most attuned. They are the humans whose senses, habits, and training harmonize with the unpredictable calculus of the forest and the bear. The lessons are brutal and subtle. Control panic, observe relentlessly, respect the animal's space, manage environment and body, and understand that survival begins long before danger is visible. Even after escape, the forest leaves its mark. Trauma, scars, and memories shape survivors permanently. Hypervigilance, fear, and psychological tension are lifelong companions. Yet these are also tools, reminders of what was learned, patterns embedded for future survival. In the end, every encounter with a bear is a microcosm of life in the wild, a balance between instinct and reasoning, body and mind, preparation and unpredictability. Survival is not heroic. It is precise, calculated, conditioned. And when all these factors align, life persists where death could have been inevitable. This is the forest's lesson. It does not negotiate. It does not reward folly, and it does not forgive error. Survival is earned in the details, in habits invisible to the untrained eye, in the body and mind reacting in harmony with the environment. Those who understand this, who respect it, and who embody it, alone emerge from the shadow of the bear with life intact.